Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. Um, yeah, we really appreciate it. I'm sure you had millions of webinars to choose from, but you chose to be here with us. So we are grateful for that. The webinar should be no longer than 30 to 40 minutes, and we will talk about building an agile and future-proof workforce, sort of buzzwords today. But also we're really excited to share our Aura Talent product with you, as we believe it is a solution with the many challenges that we're all facing. But before we get started, I do have a question, and you can type it in the Q&A. How has the speed of change impacted your organization? And you can just keep that question with you as we go through the slides. But just wanted to start off with that question. There's lots of change. So many things have just, we woke up one day and none of us were experts in anything anymore. This is my first time being in a pandemic. Mark, I'm not sure, have you experienced one before?
No, not to my recollection. I can't remember being involved in a pandemic. It's certainly been, and hey, Candice, great to be on another Zoom call with you. It seems to be a constant part of everyone's life at the moment, Zoom, Teams, things like that. But it's certainly different time to the one that we were experiencing last year. Just not only pandemic, but we have a lot of things going on around the world. So it's interesting times, let's just say.
For sure. So just a little bit about us. My name is Candice McGlenn. I am a business solutions consultant with Enovation Solutions. I've been in the talent development and talent management space for over 10 years. Prior to that, I did a lot of work in the NGO sector and just helping with the environmental movement, and also a lot of work in just social justice. And Mark, here, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. So I suppose I am the nerd on the call. So I am the head of product with Enovation. I look after making sure that the products that we develop and that we work with fit within the ecosystems of our various different clients around the world. So things that excite me is pretty much technology, learning, talent, anything and everything in between that.
Yeah, great. And so just a little bit about Enovation. So Enovation is, we have clients all over the world. We have offices in Houston, Ireland, France, and Poland. And if you go to the next slide, Mark, just a little bit about our timeline. Mark, do you?
Yeah, sure. So as the elder statesman on the call, I'll do this one. So Enovation is not a young company. So a lot of people would think of us, obviously in the tech industry, as a young company. And that's kind of testament to how we've constantly reinvented ourselves as obviously human capital management and e-learning has changed over the years. We have obviously changed with it. So the company is actually 20 years old this year. We became involved with Moodle as far back as 2004, which is essentially pretty much when it started to come about. We worked with Moodle from 2004, working with Martin Dugamus, who's the founder of Moodle, with that product and developing, evolving that product with him specifically in the markets in Ireland and in France over the course of the early 2000s, late 2000s, then going into the 2010s. And then we saw that a lot of our clients were looking for to bulk the e-learning aspect of our solutions with things like learning paths, with learning plans, appraisals, all that sort of good stuff. And that's when we also became a Totara partner. And Totara is basically a Moodle variant that also incorporates the kind of enterprise needs. And then, so in 2018, we've seen kind of massive growth in what we do. We've also seen the launch of Moodle Workplace, which is essentially Moodle now also moving into this kind of workplace arena, because Moodle has always had a strong presence within the workplace agenda because of its adaptability to various different organizational requirements. So you can modify and change Moodle whatever way you want. So Moodle changes to your organization. Your organization doesn't need to change their management system when you take on something like an open source product like Moodle or Tover. And Moodle Workplace is kind of moving further into that. And also, moving into last year, we launched our US venture and our US office with Candace. Maybe Candace, you can talk a little bit about that since you're on the ground there.
Yeah, so last year started here in the US, and I could say from my perspective, a lot of the success that we've had is related to Enovation sort of approach to helping with these products. And it's really looking at a problem and solving from that position. I think in the US, a lot of times we've looked at more proprietary learning platforms and management systems that, has functionality and things that maybe they don't align with what our organization needs. So that approach to find a solution to our customized issue and building from there and having a open source flexible system has really been well received here in the US. And I think it's something like about 80% of companies outside of the US are already using sort of that model for their learning platform systems. So
yeah, we've strong growth in Europe in kind of the early 2010s, and now we're seeing it definitely in the US. Yeah. It's really catching on.
Yeah,
and I think so going on from that, these are always fun slides to create, because obviously we've got a lot of clients across the world, and depending on our audience, we have to pick and choose which clients we pick. So maybe you can call out a couple of them, Candace. That'd be more specific.
So some of the familiar ones may be Boston Scientific, Johnson & Johnson, Bridgestone, Comfort Systems USA. And, we've built unique and value add solutions for all of these clients. And the great thing about Enovation is the majority of our clients are repeat clients. So they're coming back, and we definitely believe in a partnership with these clients.
Yeah, it's all about reputation, isn't it, Candace? It's hard won and easy lost, but yes. Thankfully we haven't lost it. We keep building on it.
Yep. And so just going into our talk, we started off with the question to you on how has the speed of change impacted your organization? And I'm a quotes person. I know Mark likes quotes to an extent, but it really, this one really hits home for me, and I think where we are. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And that to me just means that, we can't go back. I don't think that, we can unsee how interconnected our world is. I don't think, we can go back to what we felt was the norm. And I know that, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, once we get out of this time, then we'll go back to normal. But I don't think there is a normal that we're going back to. It's just the acceptance that there's a new normal and change is rapid. And that's what we're talking about. And, this year has just highlighted so much. So when we think about 2020, right? It's really one for the history books, I think, right? So it's been interesting to just realize all the things that I think it's uncovered some of the things that are broken in our system, right? As it relates to maybe healthcare or, our workforce. Maybe we weren't ready to train people digitally or remotely, or maybe we weren't set up to have people work virtually or even considered those things. Even from the civil unrest and things that are happening, it's uncovering a lot of what's happening in our organizations, what's happening, in our world, in terms of people maybe not feeling like they belong and not being able to give their input and perspectives. And so I know for me and a lot of us personally, it's really challenged us to not only see what is sort of broken or what can be fixed, but the opportunities and the possibilities that lie ahead to, creating a better future and world, even at the individual level or team level and the organizational level. And that's what we're here to talk about, right? What are those possibilities and how can we build those in our organization?
It's I think it's really I suppose just reflecting on this, Constance, I love the way you brought the quote into the conversation, and I laughed a bit because yeah sometimes myself and Candice have a giggle at some of the quotes that come true, but I think this one's a great one because it really, like, I'd like to think we can't go back to being a bud, but
Yeah.
there is certain things that will try and push us back, but we can't. We have to go forward always and look at how we can improve. Now that's scary because in the world today, what we're looking at major social unrest due to underlying issues that need to be resolved and are painful. And we're looking at things like a global pandemic that we have no vaccine for, that we hope to see a vaccine in the near future, but at the present there is no vaccine. Hopefully that will change next year. We're also looking at, well, in my part of the world, which is a big issue, is which obviously I'm based in Ireland. Brexit is a major thing that's going to happen at the end of the year. What is a kind of an interim solution at the moment that will expire now because people are very distracted with other things at the moment. Brexit is probably going to fall off a cliff at the end of this year, which is going to cause major issues for this part of the world. And then even things like global relations falling apart in many parts of the globe. And we're all staring at a possible global recession. So people will say, how can you be positive and how can you look at, okay, let's embrace the change in that kind of context. But I think we have to, because there is an element of a global renewal that we need to embrace and progress as much as in the terms of our agenda that we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all great points, Mark. And I think, a big question that comes out of that and all that you shared and I shared is, how can you, prepare your workforce? How can you prepare your organization where all these different factors and dynamics are happening? What does the future actually look like, right?
Mm.
So when we say, build an agile and future-proof workforce, I'm curious what comes to mind for many of you. You can just share your thoughts there.
They're big words, Candice. Agile,
Yeah, big
future-proof.
buzzword.
Because because we talked earlier about this, and I said I was going to reflect on this a little bit, and it's hard to even know what future-proof even means anymore because what does it? So I think agile is really important because the future is being agile, being responsive to the change that is invariably going to come, and it's going to constantly come because nothing is for certain anymore, and you can't do a monthly plan nearly at the moment. So like even looking at even in this context of innovation, our small world, like the amount of change that's gone on over the last while we would be fairly well positioned to become a remote company, there are a heap of issues that came up, right down to technical issues around making sure VPNs could hold everybody on at the same time, to make sure everybody has laptops, right down to how to support the employees that are obviously going to have childcare issues and things like that. So it's right across the board, and I think it's as well as that you have to be a more empathetic. You need an empathetic leadership at this moment in time that understands that employees are people, and people have people issues that need to be embraced and looked after.
Yeah, precisely that. It's an approach, right? Being future proof is not saying that you're able to predict the future. That's the complete opposite of that, and that you could, solve for challenges. It's not a cause and effect world anymore, right? One cause, one effect. It really is an approach, and you described that well. Yep. And so,
sorry, I'm not just skipping your slides. Apologies.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the definition that we like to use is just the ability to withstand, right? And continue to create and respond, right? And continue to create the value sustainably in times of change and uncertainty. And it's the opportunity to act in any circumstance, seeing the opportunity in any circumstance and having the flexibility and fluidity to act.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And so how do we get there? When you think about future-proof and agile organizations and being more empathetic and empathetic leadership and all the things that we shared so far, talent development, HR, um, learning and development, those are professionals that are top of the mind, especially for us, the innovation and business leaders, in terms of how to make a change in that direction, right? These are roles that are really gatekeepers and have a large impact. So at the beginning of the pandemic, what we did was we interviewed quite a few talent development leaders and just wanted to know, like, how is this change affecting your organization? What's happening? And it was interesting because one of the top things that came out of that from talent development professionals were, in my organization, there may be a possibility that learning may be cut or the budget may be cut. And we've seen that. When we go back to the previous recession, we knew that learning and development in times of scarcity, those budgets were the first to go. So we created this campaign, the Keep Learning Strong campaign, as a chat series, and we interviewed thought leaders in the industry to just help promote learning and development, but also to learn what were some of the trends that they were seeing. And so some of the learnings and lessons learned that we gained from that was organizations today, right? This whole concept of future-proof organization and agile organizations, they have to be purpose-driven organizations. And that's not just sustainability. It's not just looking at, the people and the planet along with profit. It's also understanding that you have a core purpose, your why in mind, and your purpose never changes, but your tactics and how you go about getting to that may change. And so we've seen a lot of organizations who have been successful. And that came from our interview with Ryan McCarty. I don't know, Mark, have you watched some of the interviews? Have you had an opportunity?
so okay, so hands up, I haven't watched them all, and I think
Okay.
what has been the big game changer for Keep Learning Strong for me is that it's been converted into a podcast series, which is fantastic. Yeah. So I'm a podcast person, bring the dog for a walk every evening, and I'm catching up. I haven't got to Ryan's yet, so but it's I think you should do definitely a plug for this series. So this is a series that really is just trying to do a grassroots movement to try and keep the learning agenda strong within an organization and learn from thought leaders across the board in learning. And I think it's a fantastic initiative and a fantastic chat series that I think, and I think we're getting real traction with it, with such, and I say we, I mean, I'm not really talking about innovation, I'm talking as a learning practitioners generally, because, a lot of people are interested in this to learn from one another. We have people like Donald Taylor, who's an amazing speaker, an amazing, interesting person that has a lot of experience in this arena, speaking most recently. So so I'm catching up is the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, and just some other themes that came out of that, like workforce intelligence being vital. A lot of organizations, just previously, maybe this was a nice to have for companies, but it is actually critical to understand what skills you have in your organization. Who's in your organization? Where are they in their career? Where do they want to go? So just having some key workforce intelligence being a vital component to being able to maneuver and adapt quickly in the organization. Again, soft skills are critical skills. This was one of the things that rang true in just about every interview we did so far, that, it's not, we treat soft skills as if they're complementary, but the soft skills are actually critical in order for leaders to evolve and move ahead in this time. And like you said, Mark, empathetic leadership and just being able to express empathy and understanding what it means to um, recognize people's situations and having high EQ. All those things are important. Valuing experiences. It's not a one size fits all approach. And that goes to how our approach to business and how we make decisions. Uh, in many cases, we see that there are parents who have to now teach from home along with demanding schedules. So and this ties into diversity and inclusion initiatives and making sure that you have time carved out and space carved out for people to share their experiences, their unique circumstances. Learning is connected, right? And it's continuous. And this was one of the things that came out of our interview with, Debbie. She really shared how important like immersive learning and connected learning is, and just interrupting biases that affect decision making. Organizations have to understand that when we don't look at biases as a decision making derailer, essentially, that we're not in a place to really see the full picture and think from a systems thinking standpoint. And then I'll just call out one other thing, which is the agile performance management. We were in conversations with Robert Mosley, and he is a well-known consultant and thought leader in the space of performance management, particularly in Europe and in the Middle East. And he shared a process with us on how leaders could continue to keep goals at the top of mind and manage performance from anywhere. Typically, we have rigid annual performance review processes, and feedback is not a part of the culture in the way that enables performance. And so there's been a lot of challenges that we've seen come forth from leaders, talent leaders, and also customers on how do we manage performance in an agile way that makes sense for where we are today. Have anything to add there, Mark?
Sorry, I'm trigger happy here. No, I think just to echo your sentiment there, I think obviously we've talked at length about things like interrupting biases and its effect on decision making, and how do we use technology to help with that process. Now, obviously, it's not a panacea, like it's not going to solve everything, but it can help in certain spaces. Obviously, we also connected learning, such a key part of anybody that really wants to, anybody can read a book, okay, learn from a book, really kind of understand the book. But it's only when you talk to someone that's also read the book, get their perspective, because they're coming from a different perspective. They're coming from a different point of view. They've had different experiences in their life that allows them to see things in a different way. Then that discussion allows for that deeper learning. And also, there could be some element of conflict there even. And that's a good thing, because that allows us, as long as we go with an open mind, allows us to get to a deeper level of meaning of what's going on within some sort of concept or some sort of process that will help us either reinforce the way we're thinking and help us think, okay, this is definitely the correct course of action for a certain circumstance, or may make us completely rethink the way we think the world, which is also a fantastic thing. So yeah, no, I just echo what you just said there.
Great. And one of the most, I think, profound pieces that came out of our Keep Learning Strong interviews so far is the interview that we did with Donald Taylor, which Mark spoke about him, but really impressive background, and really his goal is to advance, learning and development professionals. And he shared that there's 3 phases that we're currently in, or that we're going into. And he shared it's adopt, adapt, and advance. And so the adoption is what happened when sort of things hit the fan and we learned that our organizations and the way that we work would be disrupted greatly. So we sort of did what we could to make it work. It's like that Band-Aid. We recognized there was something happening, and we did what we could to bring change.
We could rename that a different A, just
Yeah, that's the screen phase. So adapt is a little more calmer, right? So now that we've sort of, I wouldn't say we're getting used to the change, but we recognize that it's here and it's not necessarily going anywhere. There may be dynamics that change, but now it's, how do we were in that phase or adopt phase. And now it's, let's review what we brought in and what we changed, and let's see what actually works for our organization, or let's take some things out. So this is a little more strategic in understanding what's happening. And then advance is recognizing that let's try to build some infrastructure and some systems around being able to withstand and adapt, right? On a more understanding that that's something that's going to continuously happen. And I think for learning and development professionals, the first step to doing that when we're talking about advancing, and anyone, business leaders, it's really to understand where we are. And just getting clear on that. And so if you haven't heard this before, VUCA is a model that just says that the environment that we're in and the world that we live and do business in is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I'm not sure if there's anyone who would argue with that right now. But VUCA was actually designed from an American military university after the Cold War. And you can go back to the last slide, Mark, previous slide. And after the Cold War, and just determining what sort of environment they were in, where before it was, you had known threats, and there was a very cause and effect type of scenario. You could decide, here's what we're going to do, and here's how it's going to affect that. In a VUCA world, threats and factors and effects can come from all different places. You can't just decide, here's a plan, here's how it's going to affect. It's not A and then B. It's really looking at things from multiple arrows, what if scenarios, and understanding this is the approach that we're working in. So volatility, you want to make sure you have a clear vision. You want to provide understanding, clarity, and agility being a big part of that. And so going to the next slide.
Before you move on, Candice, I just want to make a very quick a mission, I suppose, at this point. When I read about a VUCA world, when I'd seen your slide, the thing that immediately came to mind was, this is like something out of Star Trek. And then I thought, that's actually quite a good analogy. It's kind of like an alien world to us. It's totally different to anything that we've experienced before. Anyway, sorry, just a sidetrack. I just thought I'd throw that in.
Definitely, I could see that. But it is, yeah. It's definitely a world where there's a lot going on, and you can't just make linear decisions, right? In this environment. And so some of the things that really help, and this is a model, I know it looks like, in addition to the Star Trek analogy, this looks pretty weird, but it is helpful in understanding just the way that we have to think, see the world in terms of being able to gain competitive advantage and being prepared for changes and unexpected changes that may occur. And it's learning. How do we go about learning? It's exploring, it's experimenting, it's focusing on the education, but also experiences, getting immersive learning experience, based learning, and accounting for all experiences that our workforce may have. There's so many times where there are people and individuals in the organization that we may not know they have specific experiences or skills because it doesn't fit in that boxed role at that time. But just being able to have a snapshot, a clear snapshot and picture on people's experiences, on their skills, will help if there's a time where there's a shift and you need new skills or certain skills to uncover in your workforce. Just looking at the big picture, the whole picture, it's a holistic approach on how things are affected. It's complex, right? Just out of the box creative thinking. Systems thinking is I like to call systems thinking inclusive thinking, because I think an inclusive thinking organization, you're open, you're collaborating, you're interactive, you're looking at new perspectives, and then just enabling, right, through emergence. So enabling career development, it's being able to see different positions. It's not just that linear career path, but can I go into different functions of the organization, being able to play what ifs, and understanding what the development plan would look like to get there, but empowering your workforce to take that on as well. And just again, the adaptive piece and the agility piece is so important. It's really about building resilience in the organization. It's about making sure that you know what resources are available to you for, and that could be ready for rapid action at any given time. It's about clarifying what needs to be accomplished and when, and managing on outcomes and results, not necessarily the specific task, right? And building innovation, can't get the word out, building innovation in your organization, and just, again, having the data and intelligence you need to make moves in the organization. And so, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, no, it's like, and I'm always learning from this, Candice, and what I find interesting from what you just said is, I was kind of looking at it going, okay, learning people, strategic, that's all about people. How to deal with complex scenarios. Well, software isn't going to do that without intelligent people kind of, immersing themselves around a certain problem. I think that's making sure your organization is adaptive, change, all that sort of stuff. You need to have it, you need to have effective people to do all that. Innovation is all about people. So, so much of this to me talks about human capital management and how we manage our people and how we bring our people along to help solve problems in a VUCA environment. Would that be what you're kind of seeing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, as HR learning development professionals, we just have to start looking at our work in a way that, we talked about how the speed of change has impacted your organization. Let's create programs, systems, adapt technology that will help scale at the speed of change. The way that change is moving, let's build our systems, our programs around being able to withstand and building some resilience in those programs.
Cool. Yeah, that makes total sense. So we might do a lot of these things talk to what Aura speaks about. So what I might do is I might give a quick, because I know we're very short on time, a very quick overview of where Aura could fit into some of these things, if that works for you.
Yes.
So I'm just going to do some trickery here and hopefully bring it up. Through the magic of technology, you should now be looking at Aura.
Yes.
Okay, so kind of like, it was pretty amazing. Amazingly interesting stuff on, and I think you've set the scene for where we developed Aura to kind of be in, and I think we did that pretty much unconsciously and by accident, because we developed Aura originally to be a career planning tool, but it is in fact a very effective tool for helping with agility within human capital management, okay, because it focuses on careers and helping people with their careers. So what Aura looks to do is be a solution that focuses on people in a strategic way. So we all, and obviously we're coming from a human capital management perspective, a HR perspective. So we're always about the people. Okay, so we're always thinking, how are the people the difference that make, and we believe that people are always the difference, and to competitive advantage, things like that. So how do we capitalize and help people capitalize on that? And how do we help people be the catalyst for change and be that competitive advantage in that changing world? So Aura is basically a tool to help organizations adapt and move quickly. And it does that through a variety of different means. So there's kind of 3 pillars to it. So the first one is about activity alignment. Okay, and that's about making sure that, in the first case, make sure everybody is doing what they need to be doing, and that everybody is, has a, knows the objective, knows what their part in the broader mission is, so that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet. And that's when we have change, and we have people working from home, and and people are, distributed and things like that. That's really difficult to do. You can't just walk over to someone's desk anymore. So you need some place that people can, it's a North Star for people to kind of say, look, I know that I'm doing the right things as part of the organization's strategic objectives, and I understand how my bit feeds into the overall strategy. So we've built what we call an MSC touch point. So it's like a check-in. And the reason we've used MSCs, there's lots of different ways of doing check-ins at the moment. We've done MSCs because it's conversational. So when you are talking to a direct report as a manager, it's really easy to say, these are the things you must do this month. These aren't critical. You must do these. These are the things you should do. If you get time and you want to go above and beyond, these are the things you should do to do that. And these are the things you could do. And could do's are generally things that show your people that are looking to kind of progress into a new role. So they're kind of your high potential people, things like that. But the MSC methodology, why we liked it so much, and this is something that came from Robert Mosley, who you spoke about, that was on the Keep Learning Strong series. Why we like it so much is because it's so easy for managers to do. It's not a blank page. It's a very easy framework, and it's conversational in nature. And I suppose just to feed into that kind of agile performance management process, the MSC will become part of that performance management process, which then can be part of an overarching scheme where you can look at, okay, how are you performing on your tasks that you need to be doing, and then also how are you performing, how are you doing those tasks? So competency attainment is all about behaviors. Are you doing the things you're meant to be doing in the right way? So that's one pillar that we are really kind of passionate about. And then this second thing that we're obviously important is, if you give people tasks to do, you need to be sure that they can do those tasks. And also, if we're not only tasks today, but if they're tasks that they need to do in the future, we need to understand that they can do those tasks in the future. And that's about skills and competencies. So what Aura is built on is essentially is a competency framework and a skills framework. So competencies are all about the organization outlining, these are key competencies in order to do certain roles, and this is the level you need to be at in order to fulfill that role proficiently. And then skills are driven by technical skills that are, people within the organization indicating that they know how to do X or know how to do Y. And this gives, this allows people to kind of have an understanding of what, how they're doing, what their skills they can offer the organization, and also gives them transparency in the sense of where their gaps are, what they need to improve. And we do a lot of, the tool allows for a lot of assessment and using kind of a 360 approach, which gives, again, it's all about transparency. It gives the employee an insight into, what are the competencies that they're maybe floundering on a little bit, or maybe there's blind spots. So, for example, customer focus in this case would be a blind spot because the employee themselves think they're doing pretty good, but people generally that they work with might have a different feeling about that. And then also, once you're kind of looking at helping people improve, you need to help them do that in a safe and a coaching kind of environment. And that's all about, we've built a development plan to do that. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's different to development plans that have been developed in most kind of talent management systems, in that it really takes upon the agenda that learning is just one part of the equation. It's then about how do you do that transfer of learning to your role. So that's what the critical part is. And the critical person for all that to happen is the manager, to be that coaching influence in there. So while you could do all your learning in the classroom, or you could do your online learning, how do you take that and you come into a supportive environment with your manager and apply that learning in your role so that it's embedded in what you do. And our development plans really focus in on that. And I think one of the other things is helping people progress in their career. How do they develop in their career? We've developed a career gateway that basically allows the employee to understand what are the strategic roles in the organization. So these are featured roles. What, from a perspective, obviously I'm going to be quite selfish when I'm looking at this as an employee. I'm looking at self-preservation. I want to have I want to increase the longevity of my career with the organization. So what are those roles that are going to help me do that? And where are my gaps in order to move on into those roles? But this is also important from an organization perspective, because we want people to be looking at those strategic roles. We want them to be modifying their skills portfolio to match with the roles that we see as key roles in the future, so that we're motivating. So from an organization perspective, we are motivating through these kind of mechanisms, motivating people to move into the key roles of the future. And this is all informed by our agile thinking. So as the business environment changes, the roles that we need will change, but we can bias and well, I suppose it's more, not really biasing, but it's informing the employees what the organization needs more of, and then the employee, by looking at the different roles, they can gain an understanding of how they can orientate themselves towards that role and look at where their gaps are, but also figure out how to bridge those gaps. From an organization perspective, it's all about data. Then, in order to be agile, you need data. In order to make decision to have effective decision making in this kind of changing world, you need good data, because as Candice outlined at the beginning of this, you can't really rely on previous experience, because what other senior leader has lived through a pandemic? I would argue very few. So you need data in order to see what's going on in real time in the organization to make effective decisions now. So this is a very crude dashboard that we put together for this presentation, but it gives an idea of the kind of insights you can get through a platform like this. Like what are the key competencies in the organization? How well is the organization aligned to the competency requirements within the organization? What are the trends looking like? What's the strongest competency in the organization? What are the top competency deficits? So we could do simple reporting like this, and then that can fall into succession planning. So we have a succession planner which will allow you to put in a role and see who's a good fit for that role, because we have all that data in the tool. And then you can go into things like predictive analytics. Because of the power of the platform, you can look at things like, for example, at-risk employees. So on one side of the equation, you will be able to know which employees have skills or key skills, and maybe skills that not many people have in the organization. So you do not want to lose that person. But then you can also, on the other side of the equation, you can find out who's at risk of moving. So for example, who's likely to leave. So we can look at things that, like if they're very ambitious. So for example, they've indicated on the system that they are willing to relocate for a role. And there's a correlation between that and ambition. So we know that they want to move up in the organization, but they haven't moved in the last 6 months, and they are at the competency level, at or above the competency level required for the role. So they're getting bored. So we can see that there's a trend that people like that tend to exit the business. And if that person has skills that are critical to the business, we need to sort that out, and we need to do it quickly. So this is the kind of information an agile organization needs in order to effectively manage the people that are within that organization. It's no good anymore just to kind of look back on, 20 years ago, this is how we managed that situation. It's not good enough anymore. We need to have real-time information at our fingertips so we can make intelligent decisions going forward. And that's really all I wanted to quickly show you. Obviously, if anyone's interested in, or we can go through a more detailed presentation one-on-one, but I suppose I think I just wanted to show some of the capacity around some of the items you talked about there, Candice.
Yeah, thank you. You did a great job highlighting that and sort of answered all the questions that I had related to it. But one of the things that I like a lot is the ability to look at competencies for, you know, midterm and like long term, but also solve for the skills, the deeper skills that are needed in the organization by having employees put in their skills. So that really highlights the sort of enablement piece of it. And then I don't know, you didn't go into it deeper, but I'm really a big fan of that roles navigator piece on how.
Yeah. A lot of people call this one out. I think one of the reasons why a lot of people, yeah, thanks Candice for kind of pointing this out. One of the reasons why we built this career gateway is a kind of a place for people to kind of say, well, I'm interested in a certain role like a regional sales manager, and I can see what that role looks like, how I compare to that role, and also I can see people that have been in that role in the past or are currently in that role that are willing to talk to me about this role. And this is again about that connected learning, that I can connect to people, learn about the role, understand what the role involves, and maybe that person will be willing and able to be a mentor for me as I progress into that role. But a lot of people don't know where they want to progress, don't understand kind of what skills they have that could be transferable into other roles. And that's why we built the Role Explorer kind of tool here, which basically takes your competency profile and also other details about you. Are you willing to relocate? What percentage of travel are you comfortable with? Things like that. And basically matches you against other roles in the organization so that you can see, okay, these are other roles that I can progress into. Now they could be promotions or they could be horizontal moves. And it gives me an idea of, if I progress into that role, where my career could lead on to. So it makes kind of assumptions once you go into a role that you'll bridge the competency gaps that you might have going into that role through engaging with that role and learning in that role, that once you bridge those gaps, then you can progress into other roles. So this is a very simple example for the senior sales director, that they could move into the chief information officer role and then on to obviously the top role of the CEO. So it helps people understand not just their next move, but also their next move or career trajectory.
Yeah, and I like that it gives possibilities versus just the, this is a typical way to move about the company. If you're a sales director, and then you would go into X role, right? It really does have that agile component to it, and also the comprehensive piece where we do need to develop people and cross functionally within the organization, because it makes for a better workforce in general.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most interesting conversations we have with people when we're talking about this is, they always ask, people would always ask us, can we filter based on job families? And my answer to that is always why. Like, why, what's the harm? Now, invariably, you will probably, most of your results will be within your job family, because that's your competency, the nature of the way the search algorithm works. But you can also sprinkle a little bit of other roles from other job families in there, because that cross-pollination within the organization in small levels it can do amazing things. That's where innovation happens. That's where when an accountant, a person with accountancy experience goes into a product leadership role, that's where amazing things can happen. So that's so we wouldn't really advocate that you would kind of filter it based on long narrow job family kind of I suppose kind of frameworks. So because it's more interesting that way.
Mm-hmm. And then just wanted to highlight again the MSCs, because I know that this has been a big thing for managers who just have not had experience managing a remote workforce, and just that the challenge there on if someone has to take care of their child, or maybe they need more flexibility within their role, it's really offering the ability to provide flexibility here, because you're managing on outcomes, right? And
Yeah.
it's about what must get done, what should get done, and if you want to be aspirational, what could get done.
And
Right?
important in this is there can need to be a culture shift in order for that to be effective.
Yes.
So just because you're not on your team, Microsoft Teams or your Slack or whatever you're using at 9 o'clock, and doesn't mean you're ineffective. You could be
Yep.
totally effective, but you could be effective from 5:30 in the morning till 9. Then
Yep.
look, do some childcare, and then jump back on at 9 o'clock at night to 12 o'clock. And that's, as long as you communicate that correctly to the rest of your
Yeah.
team and everybody understands, and you're in an organization that's results driven or that's outcome driven, then that should be okay.
Mm-hmm. And just the final question that I have is just that if you could walk us through sort of that self-assessment and teams assessment piece, because feedback is critical, a critical part of development.
So yeah, and so we've built this in it with so what you're seeing here is essentially is the outcome of an assessment process. Okay, so it's a very simple interface that uses a star-based model, and we basically did that because essentially that's what you see on the consumer side. So we want to make this so simple that you don't need to be trained at this. The stars are basically the level that you're at, and we've had this little red arrow to indicate the proficiency level that's expected in your role. Now, the way that these are calculated is based upon what we call 360 assessments. So what the employee can do is they can request assessments of different people. So they can ask their manager, their direct report, and their peers to assess them. And what you can do from a HR perspective, you can weight each of these assessments. So the direct manager, line manager assessment could be worth could be twice the weight of, say, a direct report or a peer, or even a self-assessment. So when we do when we ask for the feedback, that obviously goes off to different people to ask them for assessment, and reminders and all that sort of stuff are automatic. And essentially, when we go into the assessment process is basically taking those competencies, giving us descriptors of each of those competencies, and basically each of the levels then also have a descriptor of what it means to be, what behaviors we're expecting at each proficiency level, so that it's as objective as possible. Now, obviously, these things are never totally objective, and there's subjectivity but we're trying to make it as objective as possible to kind of indicate the behaviors that we expect. Now, the other thing actually I should mention that's unique to our solution is this little toggle here that's so small that you might miss it. But this is a key bit of information for the career toolkit that allows us to understand what this person enjoys doing, what they want to develop, what skills they want to develop, what competencies they want to develop. So if I switch this off and say I'm not interested in customer focus, wouldn't be great for the career I'm in. Any roles which don't require customer focus would not come up. Obviously, in a company like Enovation would be extremely career limiting, but it allows us to kind of understand what excites this person, what does this person value, so that we're not just kind of we're not just going based on what they know at the moment, but what they have the capacity to learn in the future.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Well, I know that we're coming up on time, and we could dive into this even more, but if you are interested in learning more about Aura, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. And hopefully the webinar was, met your expectations, and it was worth your time. So
yeah,
anything else, Mark?
No, I suppose the only thing I'd say, Candice, is maybe just give people how to contact you, because you're the main contact person.
Yes. So to contact me, you can email me. That's probably the easiest way, at Candice, CANDICE .McGlenn, @innovationsolutions.com. You could also find us at www.innovationsolutions.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn at Candice McGlenn.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time, and until next time, take care out there.
Yeah.